Hi, everyone. Welcome in. Go ahead and start by sharing my screen and go and get started with today's webinar. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. My name is Rhiannon Williams. I'm joined by Kim Mumbower. We're both product managers here with TLC. And today I'll be sharing all about some import error workflow processes within LS2 cataloging. So some of the ways in which you can identify exactly what's going on with your import error and the ways in which you can help correct those errors or when you may want to reach out to TLC support in case you are, encountering something that is, you know, you're unsure of, but hopefully this session and then some of the resources I'll share will help you be able to sort of identify and correct any of those errors that you're running into in your importing of records workflows. So the first thing I want to do is share some of the great resources that we have available on LS Community and where you can find a whole bunch of information on a lot of what I'm presenting in this session today written out in a document, if that's helpful. So let me see. So we're going to hop over here to LS Community. And here on our Catalogers Corner page, there is a whole section called Cataloging Workflows. And we have a ton of different PDF documents here. I have the little PDF icon, or there's also a bunch of recorded past webinar sessions that have the little play icon next to them. But some of the ones that may be very helpful are a previous webinar session on correcting cataloging import errors, as well as the import error corrections in 5X document. This could be very, very helpful, and I'll share what this looks like, but it shows you what the different import errors are, and then also sort of the written out steps on how to correct those. And so we'll kind of go through that whole process today for a lot of these most commonly encountered errors. So I'm going to show what it looks like to set up to go through the import process and then where you're going to see your import errors and then how you can identify exactly what's going on. So to start, we're going to go over here to our import section here in LS2 cataloging. And you have a couple of different options in import. You have a couple of different types here. So we have our normal import, which is what you will be familiar with if you have been on versions of 5X like prior to 5.8 when we introduced the new import option. And then also when we replace title content and only insert OCLC control numbers. So for this instance, I'm going to use my normal import. It opens up this modal where it's going to have us either drag and drop files in here or to choose a specific file. I'm going to go ahead and choose a file, and I will choose, I have a whole bunch of files here for testing purposes, so I'll do this one. And I'll set this one as being in processing and as a draft. And so as part of our import process, you get to choose whether, if there are items on this, you can have them set to be either in processing item status where they need to be checked in to LS2 staff to then be available, or just have them set available right away. You also get to decide on the title state, whether you want them as a draft, which will need to be published by a cataloger or a staff member, or having them automatically be published, meaning that if there's items on them, they will be available to be viewed in LS2 Pack. And then you can also choose what you would like to have done with any matching titles. So if a title is found in your database that already matches on the incoming record, you can choose whether you want to keep the existing content in the record that already exists in your database, or you can choose if you would like to replace your existing content, or then also you can choose if you would like to merge specific information, where you want to merge subject and notes by either adding on additional subject and notes or replacing those in the existing record. We'll choose we'll choose replace existing content on this one because that's a typical workflow of, you get in records from a vendor and you want to replace your sort of placeholder records, or you may be getting records in from a service that is enriching your records and you want to overlay those existing ones. So choose replace existing content. And then I can also choose the error space, or you can choose the title space I want these sent to, since these are draft records. So I can choose the title space I want these sent to. So I'll send them to this one. And you can also choose to send errors to a different title space. So this is a great workflow to have a sort of error title space set up for your particular user so that you can send any errors that generate to that specific space. So, and I already have my authorities set to verify locally. So next I can choose my locations I want associated with this incoming record. I'm going to choose the one I'm already signed into. Oh, so there was an error validating my file. Oh, that's why I chose the wrong one. So you may get an error of like, hey, I'm validating it. That's because I chose my text file and not my actual mark record file. So that's an error you may come across, but not exactly the kind we're talking about today. So let me send this to the right space and select my error space, select my locations. Okay, now I can start my import. So here we have our pending import tab. So it shows me the file name that I imported here, the status, and it shows me how many records are in there and how many are still waiting to be processed, and then the date that it was imported. So if I go ahead and refresh, see that there's no imports pending here. But if I go to my history tab, I can see, you see I've been doing lots of testing and getting in all kinds of different types of errors. And so my most recently imported one is highlighted in red, and it tells me that no files were imported, 0 of 1. And it gives me the date and time that it was done. And then I have two little action buttons here. So I have the option to download the mark file. So download file is going to download the mark file of all of those records that could not be imported due to the error. And then I can also download my report that is going to show me exactly what's going on in my record. So I have already gone ahead and shared and added some of these into my slides here so you can see them a little bit easier than in my tiny text file. So this is the workflow for, bringing in a record, seeing it pending, come to our history tab and see, oh no, there was an error. What's going on? So you can see how many records were imported. Sometimes they may be partially imported. Or I had one of 3 that imported without errors. And then I can download the file, and this file would contain those 2 records that did not import. It wouldn't include the one that did import without an error. And then seeing our reports. So these reports are going to be where you will get any information on what errors occurred, and then we can go through the steps on how to correct those. Now I'm going to jump over to my slide so we can talk about some of the different errors that may come up and how we can address those. So this first error that comes across is a duplicate control number error, where in any of the error reports that you'll get the same information. You'll have your control number, so it'll list what's in the particular record. You'll get a list of the title, so any of the information there in the 245 field. You'll get your author information, and then you also get your actual error message. For this one, its control number exists in database on a different record. So this happens in a case where you are bringing in a title record that maybe has a different format than an existing record in your database. A very common way that you may encounter this is where if you had some records in your database and you're not on version 5.9 or the upcoming 5.10, where change format is available, and you chose to export your records out, change the format in an external mark editor, and you want to bring them back in, but you chose to use like normal import or normal import replace existing content rather than the only match on control number option, then it will give you this error. Oh, sorry, that the control number exists in the database on a different record. And that's because it could not match on a record in your database because our format is one of our matching points in our import. So it's flagging it as a totally different record and that control number already exists. I'll show you what that looks like here in our environment. So I'll come into my error space and here's my record that I brought in that generated that error. And so that came in here into my error space. And I do have, it tells me that it has errors. See the import history for details. So if I select this link, it's going to take me straight over to import history. And then I could choose to select that particular one and see what errors were going on. But we just read our error report there. So here in this record, you say, and it imported as a draft and say, I want to go ahead and publish this one. It's going to give me my error message that this title already exists in my local system. So since there is a matching control number already, it's not going to overlay it and it's not going to try and match on it because those formats are different. So I can choose to, open up my existing record in a tab, in another tab here, have them kind of side by side, and then make any changes to my existing record that I may want to. Or if I did want this version of the record rather than the existing one, I can choose to either delete my existing record that I already have and then publish this one and add any holdings information over. Or I can choose to import again by downloading that error mark record file and choose import and choose only replace title content. So this import option is going to replace any bibliographic information in the record based on only the control number, whereas our normal import has many different points within the record that it uses as match points, like our title, our author, the format, the date, control number. All of these things are factored in so that you don't have a whole bunch of duplicate records in your environment. When you have an existing record in your environment and you want to replace that information, using only replace title content will match only on that control number. So I can import this one again with this option, and then it would overlay the existing record in my environment. So that is one of the commonly encountered errors. The next one that is very common if you are bringing in records from from an existing vendor that they are kind of grouping together new holdings with your existing holdings. You may come across this one. This is something that comes across in Kim and I's testing, like of downloading records from our environment and bringing them back in. And if you download them with holdings on them, you're going to get this error a whole bunch for duplicate barcode errors. So this happens when you are importing a record and you have a holdings field in your record that has the exact same barcode as a record already in your environment. And so it's going to throw the error of a duplicate barcode. And this is one of the error types where it is not adding your title record to that error space because it is thinking that, hey, this is a major error. You don't want to add like a duplicate item that you need to reassign a barcode. More than likely, this is an error. So the ways that we typically recommend correcting this is if you are just trying to overlay the title information, then using the import option that I mentioned before, where you are only replacing title content, where you're just wanting to overlay any bibliographic information and you're not worried about adding additional holdings, then using this option is very helpful. So it will just kind of ignore all holdings information. Now, if you are importing this record and you have existing holdings and new holdings on this one, another workflow is to find your matched record already in your environment. So let me find this one. This was our book Toad. So I'll search for this by reference. There we go. Here's our title. And so I have two items on here already, and so one of these barcodes was an existing match in the record I imported. And so another workflow would be for me to just go in here manually and add my items and copy over that information from that record I was just bringing in to add in those new holdings so I'm not getting that duplicate error anymore. The other option is to edit that mark record, delete the existing holding fields in there, and then just re-import to add your holdings onto your existing record. So there's a couple of different ways depending on, especially if you have a lot of holdings coming in, like you've ordered a whole bunch of new copies, but it just happened to have your existing ones on there too, um, then it may be more worthwhile to delete your existing holdings in that mark record and re-import, as opposed to going through and adding them manually. But there is the option for, using the option to duplicate items, which can be very helpful as well. And you can create many duplicates of an item. So I can, if I have 10 more holdings I need to add here, I can choose to add 10 on here. I can make them available immediately, and I can choose to input manually the barcode, and then I can just copy paste those barcodes in here and match up those locations and collections for all of those incoming holdings there. So that's another one of our common errors that you may encounter in LS2 cataloging using import. So here's another error that you may encounter, and that's the no existing record in database. And so this is something that comes across when you are trying to import records, and it gives you the error finding best match. This is when you are bringing a record that you are trying to overlay an existing record in your database, but the system can't find one that matches on that. And so I was able to generate this in two different specific ways, and there are many other sort of like specific workflows that may encounter this, but two ways you may encounter this particular error finding best match error message is when you are using the add OCLC control number only. So that's available in our import. Yeah, only insert OCLC control numbers. So when you use this option and you are, bringing in your OCLC holdings record or OCLC record, and you want to just add that number to your existing title records, so you choose that. But if there is not a matching record in your local environment, that is when you may come across this error finding best match. And additionally, I also got this error when using the other import type of only replace title content when I chose to, overlay that record based on that control number, but there wasn't an existing control number in my environment to match on. So those are two ways that you may see this if like, oh, I haven't actually published this draft and it isn't able to make a match on it, then that might be why you weren't able to find a match and you get this error message when you're trying to overlay. So keeping tabs on your title spaces and where drafts are can be very helpful. And then also making sure that you may have like a mix of different types of records in a file, specifically from a vendor, for instance, where some you may want to overlay existing records, some you may want to bring in as new. And so there may be instances where you are downloading those error files and then re-importing them with slightly different settings and configurations. That may be one instance here where you tried to overlay a bunch of records, but one of these, oh, it didn't exist in there, so I'm not going to be able to overlay it. So I can download that error mark record and then import it using normal import, and it'll be brought into my system as a new record. So the next error that you may come across, this is something that's come up a little bit more frequently since our refactoring in version 5.8. And this is the error where it is unable to import the record, and it gives us our record ID. That's that sort of internal ID used by library.solution. And it says the title is in a draft with unpublished edits. Please try again later. So this is where you have a record in a title space that has been previously published, and you have made edits to it. So there is a draft of a previously published record in a title space somewhere, and you're trying to import and overlay that, but the system, because it doesn't want to get rid of your existing draft edits that you've already made or another staff member's made, it is going to just throw this error. So this is another error type where it's not going to add your title record to that error space. It just throws this error, and it's not going to do anything with the record at that point. Because if we bring it in as another draft, you have then two separate drafts of the same title record um, in two different spaces, and it gets very confusing. So it's going to prioritize the existing draft of a published title already in your environment that's in a title record, in a title space rather than the one brought in through the import process. So the way to correct this is to identify, like locate where that draft is. So looking through all of your title spaces, find out where that draft record is, and then publishing those changes to it. And then we can re-import this again, and it will match on that published version of your record and update any information. If you are searching, if you've come across this and you are completely unable to find that draft record, you're not able to find it in any draft title space, um, whether it's in yours or any of your colleagues, you're unable to find it, please reach out to our support staff. We're happy to help. That maybe it's like tucked away somewhere, or there are some jobs that run to make sure that there's no sort of what we call like orphan drafts, or just like drafts that kind of float out in the ether that cause this error. There are some jobs that run on the back end that clean those up to make sure that you are able to continue importing records smoothly, where you don't have some odd drafts that are not able to be located. So if you come across this and you are totally unable to find the record in any of your title spaces, feel free to reach out to our support, and they're more than happy to help diagnose that issue and then run any processes to help clean up if there's something that's slipped through the cracks a little bit. So the next error I want to talk about is the where a title could not be matched when replacing bib data. So this is a error that comes up when you are using normal import and you choose replace existing content as one of the import options. So I'll show what that looks like. We'll do our normal import, just select any old record here so we show what the setup looks like. So this could be when, you could either have them as available, or it could be in processing and have it as a draft or published. Doesn't matter how you set up your title state or your item circulation status. This is, related to the bibliographic content. So if you choose replace existing content here, where you are going to overlay information that's in the bibliographic record, while also adding holdings on there, that is where this error comes from, where you choose to replace existing content on a record, but it wasn't able to find a record to replace that bib data on. So this is an instance where this is a brand new title to your database, and the sort of workflow for this is going to be to download that mark error file from the import history tab, and then re-import using the normal import again, but rather than choosing replace existing content, let me get back to that really quickly.
Rhiannon, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're not seeing your shared screen.
Oh, you're not?
We're just seeing you as a presenter.
Oh, what happened there?
Somehow the screen
How odd.
disappeared. At
Okay,
least it is for
gotcha.
me. I don't know if anyone else is seeing the same thing, but
Right,
I
share
was worried
again.
that we're not seeing what you're showing. So
Gotcha. Okay, thanks for letting me know. Let me share that again. Again.
it was fine until all of a sudden it vanished.
Gotcha. All right. Let's see. All right.
Okay, we're
Hopefully
good.
you're seeing. Cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So rather than, in the last, when we generated this error, we chose replace existing content. And since there wasn't an existing record to replace the information of, um, when we download that mark error file, um, we will choose keep existing content. So we will then import this and it'll be brought in as a new record into our environment. So that's the sort of workflow for this particular error. This is very common when you have, files coming in from vendors where you have a mix of uh, where you've got new holdings on existing records, or you have some that have, more information. You were able to find a better version of a record and you're wanting to import it, but you then also have new records in the same file. So you may get a mix of different types of records in there where you're going to need to kind of do this import process in steps. And we do this, the reason why LS2 cataloging has this set up is so that it's not overly aggressive and um, it's not overlaying your existing records when you don't want them to. It only does it when you explicitly say, replace existing content or choose that option to match on that title control number only. But it's also not going to create a whole ton of duplicates of records where, it's just going to bring in everything as new and then require some manual merging of records on your part. So it is maybe a little bit more tedious and like step by step, but it saves a lot of work in the long run of not having a ton of duplicate records and then not overlaying records when you don't want them to. So next sort of error that you may come across is a sort of complex one. This is one example of it where you have a record parsing error, um, and you've got a whole ton of different information here from a particular record where it'll give you the control number and it gives you the exact field index. So it tells you the tag that it's in and the position in the field. And then we also get the Y information here. So in this particular record, there was an unknown Mark 8 byte found here. So it tells you exactly which one it is not expecting. So, and it tells you the surrounding data around that as well. So this usually happens when you have a record that you're bringing in, and it is encoded in Mark 8 format. So it's using Mark 8 characters rather than Unicode characters. So it's not in UTF, so it's not using Unicode, but there is a Unicode character in a Mark 8 record, and it totally confuses the system. And this happens in all kinds of Mark editors. It's not unique to LS2 cataloging. This is sort of a known issue with the uh, sort of growing pains of moving from Mark 8 to Unicode. So the records that you are editing in LS2 cataloging, you're adding Unicode characters. It's a Unicode compliant editor, and it's going to prioritize using Unicode characters when it can. But when you're bringing in a Mark 8 record and it has Unicode characters in it, it gets very confused. So the way to correct this is to use an external Mark editor. And the error message here gives you some great information on exactly where to find that field. It gives you the tag number and then also the index. So you're able to get to the particular position there, and it tells you exactly which byte is the one that it is confused by. So um, going through finding that one and then just replacing that with the Mark 8 character, or you can also choose if you're using an external Mark editor that can convert Mark 8 records to Unicode. That's another great way to do it too. It's just to convert your whole record to Unicode, and then update if there's still any outlying or lingering errors there, then you can import it again. Um, correct those errors and then bring it right back into your LS2 cataloging, and it should be all corrected. So that is this is like one of the quote unquote scarier in errors because it gives you a lot of information, but it's really helpful information to tell you exactly where that error is found and where to find it so that you can correct it if you come across it. So the next one that comes across, and there are a couple different variations on this where it says, this one in particular, it's could not find a location ID for a holdings field, the 949 field. But there are other sort of iterations on this where, it can't find a particular holdings code or, collection information, or it can't find any, or it's missing a barcode. You may come across some similar issues with our 949 fields here. So for this instance, this incoming record, it was not able to find any location ID information because this does not match my configured vendor information, the 949 setup that I have for my library in library.solution and library.solution for schools. So this is usually something on the part of the vendor where they don't have mapping set up correctly for structuring their holdings information in their MARC records match what library.solution and library.solution for schools is expecting. So if you come across this and um, this is something that's like totally out of your depth, feel free to reach out to our support staff. They're more than happy to help, diagnose exactly where it is and then kind of give you some talking points and some information to bring back to your vendor to say, hey, these are the things that are not matching up between the holdings information that you're sending us and what our ILS is expecting for those incoming records. And so your vendor will be able to change that information on their end. So when they generate new records for you with new holdings on them, they will be able to be imported with no errors going forward. So that is the best option, I think, is to kind of coordinate with your vendor that's sending you that record with the holdings information so that you don't have to do manual correction of these every single time, because that may be something that comes up if you are getting a lot of records from a particular vendor. If this is like a random one-off or you created this in external MARC editor, added the holdings, and you just maybe got something a little bit wrong when you brought it in, you can also find that matching record that's already existing in your environment, if there is one, and then add the holdings information in here manually by copying over the barcode from the subfield G and then selecting your holdings uh, your holdings code and your location and all of that, and then adding in those other subfield information into that record so that it is able to display correctly. So that's most of what I wanted to share as far as all of the most commonly encountered import errors and how you might interact with them, like how you might encounter them, the specific workflows that might encounter them, and then how you will help resolve them. So I wanted to leave some time here to be able to answer any questions. If there are any errors that you've come across that are a little different than these, feel free to let me know. And I'm happy to kind of talk through the process of how we think you might have encountered them, and then also how we would go about correcting them. Or if you have any other questions about workflows on imports and handling errors or anything like that, I'm happy to answer them for you all today.
There is one question in the Q&A.
Perfect. Let's see here. Let's see. So we have a question here from Debbie. It says, do you have a way to open bibliophile and actually show us an unknown Mark 8 character and fix it and exactly how to re-import it? So unfortunately on my machine, I can't show it in bibliophile because I am on a Mac. So I have I remote to a PC to do all of that stuff, and I'm not really set up to do that currently. I wish I'd be able to show you that process live. Um, I think that would make a really great sort of like short video. So I will definitely make that for you all in the future and then be able to share it on our um, webinars page, and I'll be able to share it in a blog post and stuff. of the actual process of like, hey, how this is how you find that error, that Mark 8 encoding error in bibliophile and then actually correct it. Um, I love using bibliophile for finding a bunch of and correcting some little things like that in a Mark editor. I also like using Mark Edit as well. It's another great tool for being able to see exactly those particular bytes in some fields and being able to correct those. Yeah, and be able to use bibliophile more with importing error correction as well. Yeah, for sure. Thanks for that feedback, Debbie and Rebecca. I would love to be able to set up to be able to show you what it looks like making those corrections in that external Mark editor. On my Mac, I'm only set up with Mark Edit right now. So I will definitely be able to show some of this in a video in the coming future of how to correct things in bibliophile. Definitely. Right. Yeah. And another question here from Brenda. When importing titles with diacritics, sometimes they don't come across and receive an error. Yeah, so there are some times where a record, um, you may have some like corrupted diacritics. This is especially common when I know this is something that has come across when doing a upgrade, like moving from 4x to 5x. You may find some records that have some diacritic errors and things like that that display. Um, but yeah, this definitely is something that, occasionally you may come across where you find a record um, where you're not getting an error. That is often when you have a Unicode encoded record and you have a Mark 8 character in it. So Unicode is a lot more flexible and is able to show a lot more information. Oh, and German diacritics. Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know that there are don't they don't come across and receive an error. Yeah, that's one of the things that, like, if you know you're getting in records that have some of those diacritics, saving them as importing them as a draft and then being able to review them could be really helpful, so that you can go and see and make sure that everything is displaying correctly. We don't really have a great way of reporting to see, where there might be diacritic errors in titles. It's usually something that, if you have a record that comes in and it's not generating this mark encoding error on the import, um, then it's usually going to be on the front end staff or your patrons that say, hey, this looks really weird. What's going on here? And then that gets brought back to the cataloger to come and correct those issues. So there's not really a great way for uh, either LSU reports or any way to kind of catch those because they're usually just a display issue rather than a actual like error in the not something so egregious that it's causing an error on the import, for example. Um, we also have here what needs to occur for an OCLC control number to replace a bib record in our system that uses the Library of Congress control number as the control number. Hmm, interesting. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Kim, do you have any insight on this of like where you have where you've got your Library of Congress control numbers?
Sometimes it'll work because normal import is looking for the control number or standard number. So if you took out all the standard numbers from the OCLC record, you might be able to have it see your local record, but it would not replace a control number. So that doesn't answer the. Sorry, I'm thinking it through as I'm talking. Um, One way is to do a reclamation project with OCLC that will, I don't know if you've done that before. I think you probably have in the past, where you send off all your data, your bibliographic database off to OCLC, and they find matches, and they determine the OCLC control number and place it in the 035 field. Then they send you a file of records back which you then use that have just that have all made sure that OCLC knows what your holdings are, and then you get this file back. That's what you import using that option to only insert OCLC control number, but it's only inserting the 035, not the 001, not the LCCN. So I think the only way you can do it is delete the LCCN record and then re-import. But that means you'll have to check items and you'll lose your items, you'll have to replace the items, you'll have to check for pending holds. It's very complicated. I don't know if that helps, but there's no easy
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. Going through that reclamation process through OCLC to generate those and then just using that file to update the OCLC control number in the 035 is the definitely the less complicated way,
Yeah.
I would say. Yeah.
I'm looking for an idea. There might be a way. It seems like I vaguely remember an idea in LS Ideas where someone wanted to be able to replace a control number. So that if I can find the idea, I'll post a link here in chat so you could put your vote in to get some development for that. Because then you could do it
Yeah.
as sort of a manually copy. You could paste in the OCLC control number, I think, if we develop it that way. So,
Yeah. I think that would be very helpful for our
yeah,
for customers who are CLC customers and are, bringing in a wide variety of different records, some that
yeah.
are from Library of Congress and some are from OCLC and stuff like that. Yeah, great. Thanks for all of the questions so far. It's very helpful. Let's see. Don't think we've got any more questions here so far. So I'll open up again. Feel free to, put any other questions you might have here. But we'll definitely look forward to having some more information on this in the future and some like specific short videos on having that error, especially like those mark encoding errors, and then finding that exact thing in your external mark editor like bibliophile, and then correcting those and then bringing them back in. I think that works well in a shorter video format because it's a little tedious of like going through a bunch of different screens here on a webinar. So keep your eyes peeled for that in the coming future. All right. Well, it looks like we are all caught up on questions so far. So I will go ahead and let you all know that we have a cataloging Q&A session again on coming up in 2 weeks on May 29th, and that'll be at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And so feel free to bring more questions. If you think of anything else related to import error corrections or anything like that, feel free to bring those to that session, or feel free to reach out to Kim or myself, send us an email, or we have a form on uh, Cataloger's Corner where you can submit a question on there. So feel free to reach out and submit questions through that form. Um, or send us an email of anything that you would like us to check into, especially if there's something really weird going on that might take a little bit of research. Kim and I are more than happy to kind of look into those issues and then be able to sort of report back and share our findings during that Q&A session, so we can share all of the details and everything, rather than looking through it in real time. So all right. I think that is everything for us today. So thank you all so much for joining us, and I hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Bye, everyone.